Hello, this is Lady Calamere. I am doing my 191st presentation and doing it on the goddess Artemis. Let me turn off the flash here. We have an appearance by Lady Boss, and as you can tell, I moved. I'm in a nicer neighborhood, a nicer area, uh, gated community, secured community, nicer community, nicer people, quieter, a lot more beautiful than I lived before. And I also changed my number about a week ago, my phone number, so that, because just too many people had it, and people who I didn't want to have it had it. So I made a change. I moved quite a distance from where I was, and I decided, I'm just gonna have a phone number that matches the county I'm in. So the cats are happier. I'm happier. You know, it's absolutely beautiful home, and I'm still unpacking. So sorry about how everything is appearing right now. So I'm talking about Artemis. She is one of the 12 Olympians. She is the daughter of Zeus, which is Zeus, but it's pronounced Zeus in Greek, and Leto. We call Leto here. She is the twin sister, but usually older sister of Apollonos. That's how you pronounce his name in Greek, and people call him Apollyon, and the Roman pronunciation is Apollo. She has many epithets, different titles, like Mistress of Animals, Light Giver, Lady of Lakes, Most Beautiful, Lady of Many Shrines and Many Cities. She is the chaste one, roamer of the wilds, sustenance of life of the wilderness, the virgin huntress, she of the silver bow, opener of the womb, lady of the wild mountains, sender forth of arrows of light, Thea Soltera, meaning goddess savior, or just savior, the chastiser, afflictor, the healer, the sower, Artemis's planet is definitely the moon. She later becomes conflated with the goddess Diana. Her earliest incarnation has been seen as a bear goddess. And there are 3 goddesses that could not be afflicted by Aphrodite. That is Hestia, which is Hestia we pronounce here, Athena, and Artemis. Aphrodite had no power over them, over these 3 goddesses. Absolutely no power. Originally, Leto was a Titaness, and then later they tried to make her more human. She's usually seen as the elder twin sister of Apollonos. And she had symbols and attributes which was the instrument called the lyre, Lyre. Her other things was bows and arrows, a quiver, torch, sometimes two torches, usually just a torch, a hunting spears, headband, bonnet, animal pelt hat, a crown, deerskin cape, hounds, hunting of the hunt, she had also a chariot drawn by hinds, Hinds. Hello, baby. Now, she was a virgin goddess. Some take this literal as a literal virgin, but others see it that she was not tied to a male. She was not married. She was not a wife, but there was a tradition in ancient times. I don't think it was very popular, but where she was married to her twin, Apollonos, also known as Apollo. So, her realm, or is the wilderness, like the forest and wild groves, not like the orchards or farms. She's of the wilderness. She's a huntress. It says she does shapeshifting, and when the Greeks came to Egypt, they said that she took the form of a cat to escape Typhon, and they said that the goddess Bast was actually Artemis. No, no, little boo, don't knock over the camera. So, what are some of her animals? Well, definitely dogs, deer, quail, bear, the boar, cats, and that has to do with because of her being conflated with the goddess Bast. Dogs, especially hounds, as well as wolves. And it was a type of fish she was associated with. So she was also called the moon, where she takes over Selene, positioned as an Olympian. She's the Olympian goddess of the moon. But some feel that both with the two torches, one stands for the moon and one stands for the sun. And one of her sacred days in ancient times, when you look up in the sky, and at this time when you see the sun and moon together, that was also considered a time of worship for her. In fact, that's one of her epithets, the moon. And she who shines for all. Other epithets are opener of the gate, the reward of dreams, she who commands the rhythmic tides. That's one of the things that the moon does, right? The very manifest one, she who shines for all, queen of night, the brightness of the night. She has at her command magic, but she is not, when you look at her magic, she doesn't do some of the darker stuff that Diana does. And I'm not saying Artemis doesn't get dark or have done dark stuff. I mean, she, out of the Olympians, she was the last one to reject human sacrifice. Now, where Apollo would be in charge of punishing the male with his arrows, like the boys and men, she would in turn be the one to punish girls and women with her arrows. Yet she also defended girls and women, especially unwed women, the old maid, as they used to call it in my time. If you didn't get married, you were the old maid. So she was the goddess of those who were not married, young girls up to the time they were married. So people associate the waxing moon, the crescent, with her, and associate her with the maiden. Her animal companions, definitely the stag, the bear, the heron, and like I said, the hinds that, or the doe, draw, pulling her chariot. Her sacred plants, palm tree, especially as Artemis of Ephesus was the palm tree, the cypress tree. The family of plants known as Artemisia. So, the willow tree. Also, bay laurel, the wild fig, fir trees, oak trees, myrtle trees, cedar. So during the Trojan War, she sided with her brother, Apollonius, against, as they see her, the queen of the gods, Hera. They didn't want to be on her side. There was just, because of what Hera did to the mother. When she found out that Leto was impregnated by her husband Zeus. Of course, his wife was pissed. Of course, she was angry and jealous. So she commanded, Hera commanded that in no place, no island would Leto be able to give birth. And when she was going through labor, she commanded Alethea, the goddess of childbirth, to stay away. So it was a hard birth, a birthing process for Leto without Alethea. And the only place that seemed to accept her was the island of Delos, I believe. And Artemis was born first, and so she, being the independent, precocious divine child, assisted her mother in childbirth to give birth to Apollonos, so it was easier. And that it was an easy birth. Well, Apollonos and Artemis would always get revenge. Those who in any way hounded their mother or said or talked, smack about their mother were punished. Where Apollonos came after the men, Artemis came after the women. When Python was sent to bother their mother during, they took revenge. Artemis had a vindictive trait about her. Now, it is debated on whether, on what her name comes from. Some say butcher. Others say dealing with the bear. Others say, no, Artemis is actually vigorous, uninjured, or even healthy. So Artemis, of course, she's the one who gives strength, and she grants strength, and she grants health to others, and that she could be called to have a blessed death when it's time to pass, and to live long. And it said that women who died all of a sudden or just got sick out of nowhere was said to have displeased Artemis. Now, there are some myths that say Leto wasn't even her mother. And this is by I'm talking about I can't even pronounce his name. Aeschylus, who says Artemis was a daughter of Demeter and Zeus, but not Leto. So, and according to an Egyptian story by Herod, she was a daughter of Dionysius and Isis. But again, the most popular is Zeus and Leto, not to confuse you. Her astrological sign is Virgo, the Virgin, and her planetary powers is the moon. Now, there's also saying that each torch represents the light of the sun, and the other of the moon. She later on becomes also identified, of course, with Selene, Hecate, which is Hecate. But again, she's her own self, her own goddess. It is said that she's also a goddess of towns and streets. But again, she feels more at home with nature than she does with the city. She later on becomes like a goddess dealing with the Amazon and Amazon woman. She deals with women, her girls and women in general, but also she also becomes a patron of lesbians, women athletes, especially, swimmers and runners, and definitely archers, definitely archery, mariners and sailors. She's also definitely a goddess for the independent woman. The woman who's true to herself, who needs no man. Now, does Artemis hate men? No. There are men that worshipped her. And there still are men who worship her. Later on, of course, during Christianity, her her functions and powers were distributed to two saints. One is Saint Nicholas, and the other, especially Saint Artemidos, who basically took her place. So, Artemis also became regarded as a lady of the chase, the hunt, and the goddess of flocks. And this wasn't about like hunting for just for shits and giggles. This was hunting for survival. This was hunting to feed your family. Artemis is seen very beautiful, but she took on the duties what a man would do. Now, even though Apollonos and Artemis was twins, she really wasn't seen as like mainly as an oracular deity like Apollon was. She didn't deal with poetry. She didn't deal with music and song. Well, Apollonos dealt with. So even though there's twins, there's some separation between them. So, oh yeah, Panos, Pan, provided her with her hunting hounds. Her arrows, her bow, and her quiver were given to her by Hephaestus. So sometimes her chariot was drawn by 2 does, sometimes 4, depending. She even had temples. She had temples throughout Greece, and she even had them in Arcadia, which was back then, was considered the backwoods, the backwaters of Greece. It was wild. It wasn't as considered civilized back then. So her temples definitely there were like near lakes and rivers. She also had in her sanctuaries or sacred wells, like in Corinth. So, like, Artemis also has connections with different river gods. And that's why even fish were sacred to her. So if you look at the Taurian Artemis, there's a different, you know, in different areas, Artemis took on or absorbed different deities, like Ephesus was her own goddess, and then later on gets swallowed up by Diana or Artemis. And that was the many-breasted Artemis or many-breasted Diana, and showed that she was like a world nurse in that way. Like the Taurian Artemis, her worship were very like mystical and orgiastic, and even human sacrifices. And yes, there was even strangers there were thrown who were thrown to the coast of Taurus were sacrificed. Artemis deals with the power of nature, the power of wildness, untamed, freedom. Her powers were within the green. Hi, Jack. We just saw Jack. Hello, Jack. Did you guys see Jack? He just walked by the camera. Ooh, Jack is famous. Now, also her worship was said to, when I talk about Ephesus, was said to have been established by the Amazonians. The Amazons. So, there was also a full moon ceremony when we talk about the festival of Monykia, M-O-U-N, M-O-U-N-Y-K-H-I-A, was celebrated. And this was on a full moon ceremony. And cakes were offered to her that had candles on. And this is sort of like, they would decorate the cakes, much like in the style of the happy birthday cakes. Where we decorate the cake and put candles on, and So it's thought that this is the origins to our modern birthday cakes. Artemis also dealt with crossroads. Literal crossroads. Also, after when the Greeks defeated their victory over the Persians, it was said that for each Persian they killed, they sacrificed a goat, and then eventually they had to change it because they killed so many Persians that if they kept on killing goats to her, the goats would go extinct. Now, a lot of people say, "Oh, Artemis, you know, you didn't do this with animals, you didn't do that with animals." Actually, it depends because in the Lafria, okay, when you deal with this celebration, it was a grim festival, the Lafria, that which was held at Patrai, and many different animals were burned alive. First, gave they put like they did this altar, and they put like some of the first fruits there. So the first fruits of cultivated trees were put on this altar, hijack, and followed this was by animals. And on these animals that were burned alive were wolves, deers, bears, and boars. And any animals that tried to escape, they were thrown back into the pyre. I know, it was very, very sad. They were burned alive. Not a pretty way to go. So, Artemis, after she helps her mother gives birth to Apollonius, also became a goddess of childbirth. So she became a midwife. She took on some of the roles of Aletheia. And she was a goddess of midwives. She helped with the childbirth. So here as we see the goddess dealing with a death dealing goddess as well as one that helps one to be born. What else? Oh yeah. So her metal is silver. So if you want to use So her colors are generally seen now as silver as well as white. Now, Artemis, just like Apollonos, who was also a destructive god, but also averted evils, Artemis did the same thing. And like I said, in the Trojan War, she sided with the Trojans. And here is where she decided she's going to fight Hera. So Hera, when they were fighting, it says that, she came at Hera with her bow and arrow, and Hera took the bow off her and really whacked her in the head a bunch of times, where she went back to Olympus crying. So I would not put her next to Hera at all. Do not put her, aka Hera, because in Greek the H is not pronounced, so it's Hera. But here we call her Hera. So the goddess can help you with independence, to rely on yourself and your own livelihood, to not rely on others. Right, Jack? There's Jack. He's an old boy. Right? You're 16 years old, Jack. He's an old man. Boop, 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 boop. So she can teach you to be self-reliant, not to rely on anyone else, to be independent. Now, I'm not saying you don't need to rely on anyone else. She teaches you to rely on yourself. Pay your own bills. Do your own damn thing. Be your own person. You don't have to look like someone else. You don't have to act like someone else. You don't have to be like someone else. Be your own self and be true to yourself. She teaches one defiance. To not sell yourself short or cheap. To not give in. Be your own master, not someone else's slave. So she teaches to look after yourself, to be no one's fool. So what else can I teach you? Jack is distracting me. Oh my God! You almost knocked over my statue. Hey, do you see Jack? Isn't he cute? This is the first appearance by Jack. I love him. So the day of the week is saying to be Monday. So Monday is a good day to approach her. Any day is. And Artemis also can teach you to take no shit from people. To stand up. To be proud. Hold that head high. Artemis does not like being taken advantage of. And she'll teach you it's time that you don't need to be taken advantage of. And that kindness should not be seen as a weakness. She was also a Potnia Therion, which means Lady of the Wild Beasts. Because wild beasts and wild animals are also sacred to her. So she is a Potnia Therion, means Lady of the Wild Beasts. She's also... There was also a bear coat in Attica dedicated to Artemis. So, when Artemis was about 3 years old, it is said that she sat on Zeus' lap, her father's lap, Zeus's lap. Some say it's 10 requests she asked of him, others say it's 6. One of her requests is to not ever be married, that she wanted to be independent, which Zeus granted. She even wished to always, have arrows, a bow, and a short knee-length tunic, that she may hunt, which Zeus agreed. One of her other wishes was to be a light bringer. So while she is a lunar goddess, she isn't always associated with the night. One of her wishes is also to have 60 daughters of Okeanos. All 9 years. Okeanos was Oceanus, the god, the titan of the ocean, not the god of the titan of the ocean, to have all 9 years of age. All 9 years to serve as her choir. One of her other wishes is to have 20 amnesides, nymphs, as her handmaiden to watch over her bow and arrow, quiver, and dogs while she rested. So, in each request she asked of her father, it was granted. And she even wanted one of her other wishes was to have as many names to separate her from her brother Apollo. And she is close to her brother, as her brother is close to her. Artemis can also uh, reverse or undo or basically to neutralize any mischief or problems caused by nymphs or nereids, because she would have nymphs with her, but they had to not be married. They needed to be dedicated to her. It is also Artemis who can give wealth or withhold it, can give luck or withhold it. She can give fertility or withhold it. Artemis proved that she could be as good with the hunt and with being independent as any male deity or man. Another thing, Artemis is a ally to Persephone. Persephone. More pronounced Persephone. Now, when we look at her, the goddess of Ephesus, she's like the many-breasted. So, and here we also see her associated with bees. And that's why, even as Artemis by herself, people associate her again with the insect called the bees. Bumblebees and honeybees. What else do I want to talk about? Oh, her foods. What do you want to feed her? Honey cakes, sesame cakes, moon cakes, cakes in general, cakes and ale, goat meat, bear meat, date palms, can't go over with chocolate, quail, birds that you cooked, chicken, honey, honey cake. Yeah, I already said honey cakes. Grapes, fruits, especially from your garden, your fruits, or you can buy it. You know, a wide range of fruits that people give her now. You can offer her juice, wine. People give her wine. People even have given her mead, milk. Venison. Those are just some ideas. A number that has been associated with Artemis is the number 6. Contradictions is to insult her mother. I would not do that. That would not, you know, be very healthy, especially in front of her. Men who abuse women is also a contradiction, a no-no. She doesn't like peeping toms. She doesn't like men who rape women. I don't like peeping toms or rapists either, so I'm with her. She's about taking your power back. So if you're giving someone their power, whether you're a man or woman, it's about taking your power back. Yeah, Artemis, it would be considered a feminist. She represents equal rights for women. So there is a book on Artemis, and I do want to pull it out. I have it as I had the paperback, but I have it packed, so let me go get my tablet. I'll be right back, y'all. Here we are. I had to go up and get my tablet. Artemis, Virgin Goddess of the Sun and Moon by Sarita D'Este. I do recommend it. So she is the divine twin of Apollonos, the twin. So Apollonos is solar, she's more lunar, but she does deal with the sun as well. She's interesting goddess of the sun and moon. And I hope the author didn't mind me showing that. But I do recommend you go get it. It's really interesting read. It's very thorough. I loved it so. And there are a few other epithets like Artemis of the Golden Chariot, Artemis of the Golden Arrows, Artemis of the Golden Reins, and these are like her solar aspects, like Artemis of the Golden Throne, Artemis of the Golden Sword. And she has so many epithets. There is so much to learn about her. There's so much to know about her. Artemis can be used to respect your body, to respect the time, to have, to self-respect, and to be proud of yourself. Zeus, she's very close to her father. He gives her everything she asks for. She was also asked to, like I said, she wanted to be guardian over streets and harbors. Zeus said, okay. Giving her 60 cities. She asked for that. He was like, okay. That's my little girl there. I'm so proud of her. And in fact, for everything he's done for her, even though Zeus, seduced one of her attendant nymphs, Artemis didn't seem to bear any ill will towards her father. She was even described as weaving robes for Zeus, where we see her as a weaving goddess. And it was says that when Zeus, tempted Callisto, she was like, okay, Papa. So, that's my daddy. Some stones that are associated with her, well, one of the stones I know is amethyst. And that was in, respective amethyst was a nymph who was transformed into the stone amethyst by Artemis. And that was a tale told by Aristotle. And basically, Amethyst was an unfortunate nymph who just happened to encounter the goddess Dionysus. And he just happened to be in a shitty mood. And basically, she cried out to Artemis, who transformed her into, a stone. But in this story, it was turned into a piece of white stone. Then Dionysius felt remorse and poured wine on this white stone, turning it purple. Amethyst means not drunk or against drunkenness. So amethyst, in this respect, of course, Dionysus, but it's pronounced Dionysius, and Artemis. So I just wanted to tell you why she was associated with that stone. Artemis is also a goddess of water. She's also a warrior goddess. She wasn't averse to fighting in battle. As you know, the stories of the Indian wars with Dionysius and in defense of the Olympians against the giants. Artemis was one of the patronesses of the Amazons, along with Ares, also Ares. Artemis wasn't she didn't carry on like Ares did Ares, but you know, she was known for dealing with war. And Artemis was petitioned for, ensuring victory. Weapon dancing with weapons were also associated with the goddess Artemis. War dances, dealing with Artemis. There was a story about, why does she hate men? Well, Actaeon was a prince of thieves and a hunter who just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, and he spied Artemis as she bathed in a stream. So sometimes he actually did it deliberately, other times it was just wrong place, wrong time. And in her fury, she transformed him into a stag, and she set her hounds of hunt upon him to tear him into pieces, into itty bitty pieces, like that song, "Itty Bitty Pieces" by 200 Stab Wounds. I got to see them in concert. I love that band. Look them up if you're a metalhead. If you're into death metal, you're gonna love 200 Stab Wounds. That was actually my last concert I've seen. 200 Stab Wounds with Tribal Gaze, opening up for Obituary. I actually got a shirt and signed by the singer, the frontman of Obituary. But anyways, one of the things is, yes, there is, like, anyone who fucked with her mother, Apollonos and Apollonos and Artemis took revenge on. So, like Niobe, who said, well, Leto only had 2 children. I had a bunch of children. And she had 7 sons and 7 daughters. Apollonos went after the sons, and Artemis went after the daughters. And Artemis basically killed 6 of the 7 daughters of Queen Niobe as punishment for boasting to be more blessed and better than her mother due to her large number of her children or her brood. So yeah, she became quite vengeful and vindictive. But anyways, I've been talking for over an hour and I've been very, very busy. I do want to show you this statue. It's cold cast bronze. As you can see, she doesn't have her bow armed and she's at peace with the animals, with the deer, and she's holding the deer. And we see her hound of hunt. Her hound is here. And she's sitting on the deer hugging the head. And she has like a modern dog here. We see the modern dog and we see her original dog. We see her hair all done up. She is quite naked except for this piece covering her genitalia. So we still see her wild and independent, but also more with her hair done up in a very civilized manner. But anyways, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it, especially if you got this far with me blabbing on. And we got to see Lady Boss and we got to see Jack. Anyways, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. I hope you really liked this video. If you didn't, give me a thumbs down. Please subscribe to my channel. This lets me know I'm doing a good job. Tell your friends and family about this channel. And share my video with your Facebook groups and your Twitter and your other social media handles. So thank you so much. I'm still getting used to all this peace and quiet. Beautiful scenery, beautiful community here. Nice people. But as always, blessed be.